Well, hello, friends. I hope everyone's doing well out there today. I wanted to thank everyone for the positive response on our last video about the breakup of Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs. As of the last time I looked, it had over 6,500 views and several likes, and I got a lot of comments on the video too, a lot of positive response. So thank you for that. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. That'll only help us to grow more and bring more content. So thank you for that. You know, back in the 1980s, when I was a kid, and I would go to the grocery store with my grandmother or my mom and dad, there was always a little magazine rack next to the checkout counter, and it was full of what they called the gossip rags back in the day, the magazines like the National Enquirer and such as those. And it was a pretty common occurrence to see rock stars on the cover and articles about their legal woes and their problems or divorces or whatever else they were going through. Sometimes the country music stars would also make the magazine. And of course the movie stars, goes without saying, they were always on the covers, it seems. But you know, the bluegrass music people and people in acoustic music, they've had their problems too. And today I'm going to talk to you about Bill Monroe and some of the problems that he endured in his life. And before I get started, I wanted to let you know the purpose of me talking about this today is not to dig up dirt on Mr. Monroe or anything. I'm a big fan of Bill Monroe, and I love his music. I think he was a genius in many ways, and the things he came up with in his music and creating a whole genre of music. But I just wanted to shed some light on some of the things that Mr. Monroe went through in his life. Some of it was probably brought on by his own self, some of it not so much so. But in my looking through newspapers.com, I found this article on there about Mr. Bill. Bible beating ends romance. And this is also talked about in his book here. Or not his book, but a book about Mr. Monroe, the Can't You Hear Me Calling, that was written by Richard D. Smith. I highly recommend this book if you have not read it. It has some really great information about Bill Monroe's life in that book. But I just wanted to share this article with you and read it to you, and also give the book's account of this particular thing here. It says, Bible beating ends romance. It says, a woman says she was trying to end a romantic relationship with 77-year-old bluegrass music star Bill Monroe when he beat her with a Bible. Wanda Huff, 51, of Birmingham, Alabama, said she was trying to get Monroe to swear on the Bible that he was not seeing other women when he grabbed the book and hit her with it at his farm near here. Huff, who was not seriously hurt in the incident Monday, filed assault charges the same day against the Grand Ole Opry star. A preliminary hearing is scheduled May 10th. Monroe was arrested Tuesday and freed on $500 bond. Huff, who said she is the divorced mother of two, described herself as Monroe's girlfriend for 3.5 years. So that's what the newspaper article had to say about the incident. The book says pretty much the same thing about the account. I'll read you just a little bit of that. And again, it's coming from this book right here, the Can't You Hear Me Calling book. It says here that she was a 51-year-old dog trainer from Birmingham, Alabama, and she told the Sumner County authorities that she was having a relationship with Monroe, who had gone to his farm. According to her complaint, Monroe became angry, hit her in the face with a Bible, knocked her down, and kicked her in the face. The woman later told the Nashville Banner that she had been using the good book as something of a lie detector to test Monroe's fidelity. I said, swear on it to me that you have not been running around, because that way you'll tell me for real. He said, I'm not going to do it, and swack, right in the mouth. She added it was a big old Bible. So that was the book's telling of that, but then it goes on to say that Tony Conway, he was Monroe's manager, I believe, at the time, says Tony Conway and Bill's attorney insisted that the woman was a stalker who had been calling Bill as many as 20 times a day, that she had created a disturbance at the farm and refused to leave. It was Monroe, they said, who had called the police, a claim confirmed by Sumner County authorities. It is likely that Bill, feeling assaulted himself, grabbed the book and swatted the woman indignantly, but he certainly did not use the Bible to administer a beating. On the day before the court hearing, Sumner County Sheriff Richard Sutton confiscated a loaded .25 caliber semi-automatic pistol from the complainant's pickup truck. Assistant District Attorney D. Gay told the judge that he had serious problems with the credibility and mental condition of the witness. The charges were dismissed and Monroe was exonerated. So Mr. Bill was exonerated from those charges. And just from what sounds right to me, I kind of doubt that Bill Monroe give the woman a beating with the Bible. I think it's more likely, like this book says, that perhaps he just swatted her with it, got it away from her and swatted her indignantly. You know, because when you say beat somebody with the Bible, I'm thinking about the old WWF, WWE wrestlers that would get the old metal straight back chairs and, you know, do that to their opponent in the ring. It's kind of hard to imagine Bill Monroe doing that, especially at the age he was at that time. I think it said 77. So, but that wasn't the only legal problems that Bill ever had. One time he and Tony Conway flew to Washington, D.C. to the White House to a luncheon up there that was hosted by President Reagan. And it says here in the book that Tony often had to remind Bill about little details, and now a reminder was crucial. They absolutely would not be admitted to the White House without their invitations. Tony mentioned it again just before they left for the airport. Sure enough, Bill's was still in his briefcase on his tour bus. A driver rushed the case over to Buddy Lee Attractions' offices just in time for Conway and Monroe to catch their plane. But that's not the worst part of it. They went to the luncheon, and while they were at the luncheon, Bill met Frank Sinatra, and Mr. Sinatra was really gracious to Bill and said he had been a big fan of Bill Monroe. He remembered hearing him back in the 40s on the Grand Ole Opry. And so they do the luncheon, and Mr. Conway and Bill headed back to Nashville so Bill could play the Opry that Friday night. But it says here, as they passed through the Washington airport security, there was a sudden commotion. Conway looked around on the x-ray screen and his stomach churned. On the screen was the sharp, nasty silhouette of a .357 Magnum handgun. Airport security opened Bill's suitcase and found the weapon tied up in a velvet presentation bag. It was fully loaded, 6 rounds in the cylinder. The identifying numbers on the barrel had been filed off. Conway and Monroe were surrounded, put up against the nearest wall, and searched. The story Monroe told was absolutely true. Yes, it was his briefcase and his pistol. The weapon had been a gift from a fan who was worried about him traveling with large sums of cash. Bill had forgotten the gun was in there. He had only been carrying the briefcase because his luncheon invitation had been in it. Bill and Tony were locked in a downstairs holding cell. When the unhappy duo explained why they'd been in Washington, Secret Service agents showed up. As the situation tumbled from bad to worse, Bill kept asking, "Do you think you could let us go now? I have to play the Opry." Conway managed to keep this embarrassing incident out of the newspapers, but was unable to keep his client from having to pay a $15,000 fine. And then the Senate Minority Leader, Robert Byrd of West Virginia, a friend of Bill's and an accomplished amateur fiddler, tried unsuccessfully to have the case dismissed. All things considered, Bill was lucky. He could have been in prison. So Bill Monroe certainly had his share of problems in his lifetime too. That's just a couple of them. Later on, Mr. Bill fell on some hard times financially, and his farm in Goodlettsville, Tennessee had to be auctioned off, but there was a good outcome to that too, because the Opryland people bought it and basically let him live there the rest of his life. So that was a good turn of events, being that it had to be sold, you know. What do you think about the account in the newspaper article and in the book about the Bible beating, as it was called, and also about Bill and Tony Conway getting in trouble there in Washington, D.C. because of the loaded .357 Magnum in Bill's suitcase? Let me know down in the comments. I'd like to know what you think about it. I would say Mr. Bill had his share of problems in his life. But anyway, again, thanks for watching these videos, and please subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you next time around.